Hello, everyone. Once again, this is Sensei Monday with Shadowhawk Koga Ninjutsu training. I have some more techniques on kenjutsu, samurai style kenjutsu. One of the techniques that I wanted to share with you on this video was one of the first basic techniques that I learned uh, when I first started combat training kenjutsu for combat fighting back in the 80s. After about 1985, going 86, I started learning combat uh, samurai fighting techniques. My sensei in the beginning of that time, in 85, started training me on basic samurai skills that led up to battlefield combat skills. And in one of these techniques I'm going to demonstrate is called Hangiri Watsa. Han means to turn, Giri means to cut. Okay? So the technique is basically a turn and cutting type of method in combat. So what we'll do is the sword is already out. Okay, we're in a chudan or a Saigon no Kama. Alright, this is from a front view I'm showing you. Okay. So what you would do is, I'm going to turn to the side so you can see this more clearly and understand. Okay, I switch to the right foot lead this time. Standardly with the right foot lead. The sword is pointed at the eyes, sometime at the throat. Okay, of the enemy to throw them off to see how long your sword is. Okay, in most cases, what that was used for. So what you would do is, you would pivot out of the angle again with a name uki or yoko name uki, which is a side like slide off type of angle type counter where it slides off the blade. And when you strike their vertical strike, you would simply just turn off of it, okay, with this part of the side of the blade, not the blade itself, okay? So it would turn off his blade, pushing him out to the side this way while he went forward with the cut, and you would just simply come behind him and cut him from the back part of his back, from the base of the neck down to the vertebrae center line of the spine, going down to the lower portion of the spine with a straight tateuchi, okay, or shomenuchi. All right. So let me do it on this side so you can see what I'm talking about now. I'm gonna go on this side. I'm gonna push once again on the other side. Okay, let me switch feet. Now I'm to the left. See how I come here? The parry of it slides off that name uki. Now I'm going to take that part of the blade, jamming it off sideways off his part of the blade, and turn behind him, cut. That's how that technique would be performed. Okay? Hungary Watson is a turning, cutting technique. Alright? Now there's another technique that's similar to it. That would be called Han Yoko Geri. Han Yoko Geri is where you don't go to the back side of them to get behind their back and cut them. You would go to the sides of them. So I'm in Saigon or Chunan. I'd basically do the same thing again. It's Nami Uki. So as soon as I block his strike, I would let him go past this time, and I'd move over here and cut his wrist. Okay? See how I did that? I slow it down. So I would parry off. I wouldn't get behind him. As soon as his attack slides off and goes this way, and I move sideways on his attack, whichever side he struck with, and I come down right here cutting the kote. Alright? And that's Yoko Hungary. Okay, slow that down. Okay, so 1, 2 is the turn, 3 is the cut across the kote here. So you're coming off at the sides of whichever tack they swung. Okay, hurry off with that yoko nami uke, and then perm to the side once they're struck. Went forward, coming down on their hands or wrists, mainly the forearm here, cutting the kote, disarming them. All right. Switch your feet to the right. All right. And that's how that technique would be done. Okay. The difference in the two techniques is that Hungary, Watson, is where you would turn, push behind. Okay? Okay? In Yoko Hungary, you wouldn't push, stop right there and turn as they're struck, went forward, or strike, come to the side, cutting kote. Switch your feet to the right, that side. Okay? Perfect. Alright? So that's the difference in those two techniques. Okay? One is turning, that half turn to get behind their back. Okay, to cut down from behind. Once the strike is coming forward, that forward momentum, you already pushed the side of the blade off their side of the blade to knock it out where you can turn completely behind them. Cut the vertebrae. And the second technique, Yoko Hungary, is where you're going to turn, okay? You don't really have to necessarily push it on the sides of the blade, because you're not trying to get behind their back like you would with Hungary. Yoko Hungary is where you just come with that name uki, and you would just turn on the left or right side where they were striking to cut on the sides of the kote. That's the only difference. One is getting from behind and cutting, and the other one is just turning to the sides of where the strike went forward to cut their arm. So those are two combat samurai techniques that I learned in combative samurai battlefield fighting. Very important. The way my sensei was explaining those in the beginning, that they did fight with these in Yoroi, okay, armor, but they had to do it a little bit more different because armor is heavy, carrying all the fight on the battlefield in samurai armor, So they had to come up with these movements of technique to maneuver, to make these techniques work. But unfortunately, they would have done it different armor because they would have had to cut certain sections where it was openings in the armor to make these techniques work. Same thing that they was going to do Hungary, Watson, because they couldn't just cut the back part of it so easy because it would have been covered with armor. So these techniques would have been mainly fought with samurai without the armor, basically, these two techniques, okay? But there are other techniques that they did use where they could cut in certain areas of the armor to get to the vital spots to take them down on the battlefield when they was wearing the armor, okay? So I want y'all to know the difference between those methods of combat with samurai. And you must know that certain types of techniques, you got basic techniques to teach you drills when you first learn samurai kenjutsu, the footwork, the strikes and the parrying and the angled blocking, of course, mainly the parrying, with the sword. You learn that, and then that's when the strikes will come in. All the different levels of strikes, the ski, the basic ski, thrust. You have to learn those, and then you learn the basic combatics of the samurai fighting. And that's what these two techniques that I just demonstrated was what my sensei gave to me at that time. So those are considered to be combative samurai techniques. Okay, so they work very well, in combat situations. Learn how to master them, how to use them. Okay, there'll be other samurai kenjutsu techniques that I will be displaying, explaining more on combative samurai skills. Okay, so I'll be happy to share those. But I thank you so much for allowing me to show you these two techniques and how they're used. They're very basic for combative samurai kenjutsu techniques. A lot of root schools have these techniques. Some are just named different, and some of them are done similar. Some may be done a little different. You gotta remember Japan had at least over 2,500 sword schools in Japan that still exist with different samurai ruhas. All ideals and principles, all their methods may be different in technique, but you gotta remember that they lead back to the same way of Budo, the Bushido, the warrior way. So you just can't leave that out because every Ryu school always has a method of how a technique was done. Okay? So always remember that. I thank you once again for listening. I thank you for having an understanding of what these techniques are, especially with these two techniques here. This is Sensei Monday on Shadowhawk Koga Ninjutsu Training. Subject on Samurai Kenjutsu techniques. I will be getting more into ninja sword techniques also up in upcoming video. Thank you so much. Us.